Joining us this afternoon, we have Dallas Woodhouse. We haven't spoken to him for quite some time. He is the state director of America Majority Action, and I want to talk with him in relationship to concerns that have been expressed related to the state Senate campaign, the U.S. Senate campaign for the Senate seat that's being vacated by Senator Thom Tillis. It's now an open seat for 2026 midterms. And obviously, it's going to be a very, very important race. I would argue even a contentious race. And I'll get Dallas's observations on that right at the beginning. But also, what is the future for that seat and for conservatives in North Carolina? And with that, Dallas, good afternoon. Welcome to the program.
Lockwood, always great to be with you.
It's a pleasure to have you. It's been a while. Since the election, as a matter of fact, when we were last talking. How important is the upcoming Senate race in the 2026 midterms?
Well, of course, it's critically important to the people of North Carolina. Any Senate seat in the country is. It is unique in that it is really the one Republican-held seat that is in jeopardy. Most of the seats that are going to be closely contested are actually held by Democrats. That's in Georgia, that's in Michigan. So while it is important, there is the possibility, perhaps the likelihood, that even if the Democrats were to win North Carolina, which would be the first Senate race they have won in 18 years since 2008, that Democrats would not control the U.S. Senate in the last 2 years of the Trump administration. Now, we'll see how that plays out, but that's the conventional wisdom at this time.
Obviously, and I would also, we make observation, we both know, gosh, a half year is a lifetime in politics practically. So we're a year and a half out from that election. So we'll obviously have to see what happens as things transpire in Washington, D.C., the economy, world politics, things of this nature. Now, the other aspect of this race, Dallas, is I think the significance of it related to the national campaigns. I'm thinking that there's going to be a lot of focus on this Senate race from the DNC and the RNC. You've mentioned it's important to North Carolina voters, but I think that both the national campaigns of the major parties, the Democrat and Republican, are going to be putting a lot of emphasis in this Senate race in North Carolina.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's going to be the hottest Senate race in the country in 2026. And, spending on both sides will get into the hundreds of millions of dollars. Several $100s will be spent per voter in North Carolina to try to win their vote.
And, of course, the question is being asked who might be the candidates. There's a great deal of speculation that it's going to be Roy Cooper as a possible candidate. And then they're waiting patiently or impatiently in the Republican arena for a possible selection of Lara Trump. Let's start with Roy Cooper. Your thoughts. Is that a reasonable expectation?
So I've sort of changed my mind on this. I didn't think he was going to run for a long time, but sources I've got indicate that he is preparing to run for Senate. The former governor, but he will not be a surefire winner. He has never lost election, but he could lose his last election. And let me tell you a couple of reasons why. Just as North Carolina has a tendency to elect fairly moderate Democrat governors, there's a percentage of the population that very much wants to elect Republican U.S. senators. Republicans have won 6 straight U.S. Senate elections. The Democrats last one in 2008, and the Republicans won in 2010, 2014, 2016, 2020, and 2022. If you look back to when the Democrats last won a Senate race, there were 500,000 more registered Democrat voters than there are today. And, of course, the state has grown a lot in that time, but they are down 500,000. And the Republicans are up 250 to 300,000. I mean, you're talking 750,000 change in partisan registration to the advantage of the Republicans since they last won a Senate race. Cooper is formidable. He will also, in his Senate races, even though McCrory was the incumbent, he outspent McCrory like 3-1.
Mm-hmm.
I think probably outspent Dan Forrest 9-1 or 10-1. He will not be able to do that in a U.S. Senate race. The spending will be fairly competitive. I would say he's the front runner, not by much. He's the favorite, not by much. He can be beat.
Again, we're talking with Dallas Woodhouse of American Majority Action, where he's the state director for North Carolina. Dallas, the other aspect of Cooper's success, both McCrory and Dan Forrest particularly had the problem of not having a great deal of name recognition across the state. Pat McCrory did, but the problem, I would argue, in both those cases was a rather, and this is my description, a rather tepid support from the state Republican Party. You may not agree with me on that, but I just don't think that either Pat McCrory
I don't actually, but
okay. But to your point, Cooper was a very casual candidate during his period of time as Attorney General. As a matter of fact, I think at least once, maybe twice, ran
2012, he didn't even have an opponent.
Right. I tend to agree with your observations about Cooper's chances being a different aspect altogether. Let's talk here now about the Republican candidates. And, of course, Lara Trump seems to be the odds-on favorite from the public's perspective. Of course, right now she has not made any decision. And, of course, there are other candidates out there. By the way, I've got to ask you, Wiley Nickel, he's already announced that he wants to run for the Democrat candidate for Senate, for U.S. Senate. But
they'll run him out if Cooper gets in.
Okay. All right. I was wondering about that. Let's talk about the Republican candidacies. I know that Dan Bishop's been proposed for it. I know that Michael Whatley has been suggested. Of course, we've talked about, as I mentioned, Lara Trump. Other than Lara Trump, is there a strong voice?
Well, Lara Trump would be the Republican nominee if she wanted it, but I don't think she'll run. She is currently a resident of Florida.
Right.
And they just had a Senate seat open up where she would have been an appointed U.S. Senator for some amount of time before she would have to run in a state that would be easier to win. She also has young children. I think she would do fantastic, but I don't think she's going to do that. I think Whatley is a very interesting candidate, and he's done well. But I suspect Donald Trump is going to want Michael Whatley to stay at the Republican National Committee, where he is the national chairman,
right,
until we get through the 26 election. And then my suspicion is that Whatley might be a candidate for governor in 28.
Wow. Okay.
And so Brad Knott, who's our newly elected congressman in the Triangle area where I live, is certainly somebody that's being mentioned. But the name I'm hearing the most is the new 10th District Congressman, Pat Harrigan.
Harrigan, right.
Has the seat that Patrick McHenry had for a long time. In the primary, beat a well-respected Republican state legislator. He is a young, has very impressive military service. My gut is it may be him. We'll see. The Trump endorsement's going to be key, but I don't think this will drag on too long. I think the Republicans will have a pretty good idea who their candidate is going to be, and the Democrats will have a pretty good candidate who their candidate's going to be by Labor Day.